So imagine building a digital tool that is just so incredibly useful, so universally loved, that 15 million people download it and use it every single day.
Right, like you're basically the darling of the internet at that point.
Exactly. But then, I mean, imagine realizing that this exact massive popularity is the precise thing driving your company into total financial ruin.
Yeah, it's such a wild paradox.
It really is. And today, we're taking a deep dive into the source material behind a piece of software that lived that exact nightmare.
It's basically the ultimate cautionary tale of the Web 2.0 era. We're looking at a browser extension called Xmarks Sync, which actually originally launched under the name
Oh,
Foxmarks.
Foxmarks.
Yeah, and if you're the kind of learner who really wants to understand the foundational architecture of the internet we use today, but, without getting bogged down in endless technical jargon, this is definitely for you.
Absolutely, because their story, it isn't just about some old tool that saved your favorite websites.
No, not at all.
It's a masterclass in the broader narrative of early cloud syncing. The frankly brutal reality of software monetization and really the evolution of digital privacy.
Yeah, the privacy aspect is huge, but to really grasp the stakes here, you have to mentally travel back to the digital landscape of like 2006.
Oh, man, 2006.
Right. You probably remember what the early days of the modern web felt like. If you were using Firefox on your office computer and Internet Explorer on your home computer, those two ecosystems were totally, completely isolated.
They were absolute walled gardens.
Completely. Your data lived on the physical hard drive of the specific machine you were sitting in front of. There was just no concept of a continuous, cloud synced identity that followed you from device to device.
Let's actually use an analogy here because managing your digital life back then was, well, it was a lot like maintaining a physical Rolodex.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so imagine having this massive, heavy Rolodex sitting on your desk at work. You find a fantastic website for your industry, you write down the address on a paper card, and you slot it in.
Very analog.
Exactly. But then 5 o'clock hits, and you commute home. If you want to visit that exact same site from your living room, you either had to miraculously memorize the URL,
Which nobody does.
right? Or you had to painstakingly duplicate that physical card into a second, completely separate Rolodex that you kept at your house.
And the friction there was just immense. I mean, people would literally email themselves links just to bridge the gap between their own personal computers.
I totally used to do that, just an inbox full of random links.
We all did.
Yeah.
Because the browsers back then, like Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, Apple Safari, they were designed by competing corporate entities.
Right, Microsoft, Apple.
Yeah, and they had absolutely no incentive to let their software communicate with a rival's software.
And that is the exact headache that a man named Mitch Kapoor decided to solve in 2006 when he founded Foxmarks.
And honestly, looking at the sheer scope of what they managed to synchronize, it feels like they pulled off a magic trick.
It really does. Because they didn't just sync your bookmarks.
Right.
They synced your passwords, your open tabs, and if you happen to be using Firefox, they even synced your entire browsing history across machines.
Which is huge. And we really have to pause and look at the underlying mechanism here to appreciate why this was such a monumental achievement.
Yeah, break that down for us.
Well, today, companies like Google and Apple, they bake syncing directly into their operating systems, right? It's just a feature of their closed ecosystems.
And you buy an iPhone, it just works with your Mac.
Exactly. But back in 2006, Foxmarks was a third-party extension acting as this universal translator between entirely different architectures.
So getting Internet Explorer to somehow shake hands with Safari.
Precisely. You're dealing with entirely different ways of storing data locally. Like one browser might use a proprietary database format,
Right.
while another uses simple flat files or registry keys.
So Foxmarks had to extract that data, securely transmit it to a central server, standardize it, and then perfectly inject it into a rival browser's architecture on the other side of the country.
Yeah. It was a massive technical and cultural achievement to force these walled gardens into harmony.
The users clearly recognized how revolutionary this was. I mean, the adoption rates detailed in the sources are just staggering.
Oh, they exploded.
By April of 2009, this little add-on was hitting 150,000 downloads every single week.
That is wild for 2009.
It really is. They eventually reached almost 15 million total downloads.
Yeah, and the demand was so intense that, well, Opera wasn't officially supported by the company.
Right, the Opera browser.
Yeah, but users actually found a workaround using the Google Chrome extension just to force the software to function on Opera. I mean, people were desperate for this cross-browser harmony.
And 2009 is also when they rebranded, right?
Right. They dropped the Fox and Xmarks since, they were no longer just a Firefox tool and became Xmarks.
Big sense.
And they started rolling out sophisticated features like suggested tagging for your bookmarks.
Right, so they had essentially mapped out a core, vital function of the modern internet years before the big tech giants got around to building it themselves.
Exactly.
But, you would think 15 million active users is the ultimate victory lap.
You'd think so.
But if we look at the financial data in our sources, that exact number was basically a ticking time bomb. Which brings us to what I look at as the $9 million question.
The infamous $9 million question.
Yeah. We had this stratospheric high of user adoption, but then the company hits a sudden screeching halt.
They basically slammed headfirst into the reality of server costs.
I was looking at the financials in the source material, and it is honestly staggering to read in hindsight. The company was relying entirely on a voluntary donations funding model.
Which is always a risky bet.
Super risky. By October 2010, investors had sunk $9 million of venture capital into the project. And apparently, there was no clear return on investment anywhere on the horizon. So, on September 27, 2010, Xmarks makes this shocking announcement. They declare they're going to completely discontinue the service by January of the following year.
Just boom, we're done.
Yeah, they were just going to pull the plug.
And the reaction from the tech community was an absolute explosion of panic. The CEO at the time, James Joaquin, noted he was, I think his quote was, pleasantly surprised by the massive volume of interest from both users and potential buyers the second he announced the closure.
Well, which leads to this incredibly desperate pivot.
Yeah.
They threw up a pledge page.
Oh, the pledge page.
Yeah, they essentially begged their user base, asking for 100,000 people to promise to pay $10 to $20 a year for a theoretical premium service.
And they needed those pledges immediately, like by October 15, just to keep the servers from going dark.
Wait, let's unpack this for a second.
Yeah.
Because this is crazy to me. They had 15 million downloads.
Right.
They had $9 million in funding. Yet they still had to go hat in hand to their users for $10 pledges. Was the internet simply allergic to paying for software back then?
Well, it wasn't an allergy to paying. It was a fundamental shift in the architecture of how software operated. This is the ultimate trap of the freeware model when you apply it to the cloud.
How so?
We have to look at the difference between traditional 90s desktop software and Web 2.0 cloud services. Like if I build a calculator application in 1998 and you download it to your physical hard drive,
Okay, yeah.
my cost as a developer ends the very second your download completes. You can use that calculator a billion times and it cost me $0.
But cloud syncing is an entirely different beast.
Exactly. With cloud software, the download is just the beginning of the expense.
Ah, I see.
Every single time one of those 15 million users opened their browser, added a bookmark, or even opened a new tab, their computer sent a ping across the internet to the Xmarks servers.
Wow. Every single tab.
Yes. The server had to receive the data, process it, store it, and then push it out to all your other devices.
So every single action taken by a user costs the company a tiny fraction of a cent in server bandwidth and compute power.
And fractions of a cent multiply very quickly when you have 15 million people generating them every single day.
That's terrifying.
It's the core lesson of SaaS software as a service unit economics. In cloud services, if you don't have a hardened monetization strategy from day one, massive success is actually a liability.
Because you literally can't afford the popularity.
Right. Every new user Xmarks celebrated meant more server space, more database maintenance, more bandwidth bills. They grew so incredibly fast that their greatest triumph became the exact mechanism driving them to bankruptcy.
So they were literally suffocating under the weight of their own popularity.
Exactly.
But the story doesn't end with a total blackout. Just before the clock runs out, on December 2, 2010, the password management service LastPass swoops in and acquires Xmarks.
Right under the wire.
Yeah, and they end up launching that premium service a week later on December 9. So, crisis averted, right? The tool is saved.
Well, financially saved, yes. But salvation in the corporate tech world doesn't always translate to innovation.
And that brings us to a period from 2011 to 2018 that we can really only describe as The zombie years.
The zombie years, yeah. Perfect name for it.
The post-acquisition reality for Xmarks was pretty grim. According to the source material, the program was minimally updated. It received baseline bug fixes to keep it functional, but it did not get a single new feature added for the rest of its existence.
It was essentially put on life support. I mean, LastPass likely bought them primarily for their massive user base and the underlying synchronization technology.
Right, to integrate into their own stuff.
Exactly. They could use it to bolster their own core password management ecosystem. But as a standalone, evolving product, Xmarks was no longer the priority.
It makes me think of someone buying a beautiful vintage classic car, but instead of driving it, they just park it in a garage under a heavy tarp.
That's a sad image, but yeah.
They go in there maybe once a year to give it an oil change, which is the bug fix,
Yeah.
just to keep the engine from completely seizing up and rusting out.
Right.
But they never take it out on the open road again. It
Yeah.
just sits there, slowly aging out of relevance.
And the broader corporate timeline reflects that perfectly. In October 2015, LastPass itself gets acquired by a much larger entity, LogMeIn Inc., for $125 million.
$125 million. Wow.
Yeah. And at the time, LogMeIn released a statement saying they plan to continue supporting Xmarks. But, the clock was always ticking.
Right.
On March 30th, 2018, LastPass sends an email to the remaining users announcing the final, absolute shutdown of Xmarks on May 1st, 2018.
But wait, before we leave these zombie years entirely, I have to bring up a bizarre tangent from the source material that left me completely bewildered.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
It's so weird. In May 2012, while Xmarks is quietly sitting in this maintenance mode, the xmarks.com domain was suddenly blocked by major internet service providers in India by a court order.
Yeah, just out of nowhere.
Users in India were just getting a generic screen saying, access to this site has been blocked as per court orders. And according to the sources, Xmarks was caught up in a sweep that blocked various torrent and video sites like the Pirate Bay, Vimeo, and Dailymotion.
It's crazy.
How on earth does a boring utility bookmark syncing tool get lumped in with global piracy hubs by a high court?
I know, it sounds like a surreal administrative typo, but it actually exposes the mechanical reality of how internet censorship operates on a technical level.
Okay, I need you to walk me through this.
So this is a prime example of the collateral damage caused by broad, blunt instrument sweeps by ISPs, internet service providers.
But how does the internet mix up a bookmark tool with a torrent site?
It comes down to IP addresses and content delivery networks. When a court orders an ISP to block access to a piracy site, they rarely have the surgical precision to block just the specific URL. Instead, they often block the entire IP address associated with that site's servers. But modern websites don't usually sit on their own isolated servers anymore. They use shared hosting providers or CDNs to manage traffic.
Oh, I see. So it's like a massive digital apartment building.
Exactly. That's it. Perfectly. The Pirate Bay might live in apartment 4B, and Xmarks might just be renting apartment 4C down the hall.
Right?
They share the same street address, the same IP block. When the ISP receives the court order, they don't knock on the door of 4B. They just demolish the entire building.
Wow.
They sinkhole the routing path for that whole IP block. So Xmarks wasn't targeted for its content. It was essentially just standing too close to the wrong crowd in the eyes of the network infrastructure.
That is fascinating and honestly deeply concerning when you think about how fragile digital access really is.
It really is fragile.
But zooming back out to the eventual shutdown in 2018, it seems inevitable, right? I mean, LogMeIn buys LastPass for over $100 million entirely to acquire its enterprise security business.
Yeah, that was the real prize.
And by 2018, browsers like Google Chrome and Apple Safari had completely perfected their own native built-in syncing anyway.
Right. To a massive corporation like LogMeIn, Xmarks wasn't a pioneering revolutionary tool anymore. It was a redundant, obsolete piece of legacy code that literally just cost money to maintain.
So pruning it from the portfolio was just a simple matter of corporate accounting.
Exactly.
It is so ironic, though, that LogMeIn viewed Xmarks as an obsolete piece of the puzzle by 2018, because if you look at how Xmarks actually handled user data back in their prime,
Oh, yeah.
they were pioneering concepts around digital privacy that we are still fiercely debating today.
Absolutely.
I mean, before data privacy became this massive, regulated global buzzword, how did a company in 2006 handle holding the keys to the entire browsing history of 15 million people.
Well, they offered a really fascinating mix of practices. Some were incredibly forward-thinking and empowering for the user, while others were honestly the exact blueprint for the data mining economy we live in today.
Let's get into that, because looking at the sources, Xmarks provided an option to encrypt bookmarks while they were in transit between the user's browser and the central server.
Which was great security for the time.
Yeah. And their privacy policy explicitly stated that individual users' bookmarks were kept private from other users. Like, you couldn't just look up what your neighbor was reading.
Right. The individual files were siloed.
However, they did analyze all those private bookmarks in aggregate.
Yes. That aggregated data was the fuel for their secondary public features.
Exactly. They took millions of user bookmarks and fed them into features like suggested tags and this tool called Smarter Search.
Oh, Smarter Search.
Yeah, which actually actively enhanced Google web search results based on what Xmarks users were bookmarking.
It was essentially crowdsourced SEO.
Right. Now, the privacy policy promised that the results of this analysis were published without providing any identifying information about individual users.
Right. It was anonymized.
But I want to push back on this model for a second. Is analyzing our private, personal bookmarks to feed a public search algorithm an early breach of trust? Or was Xmarks just pioneering the exact same data for convenience trade-off that we all blindly accept every time we download a free app on our phones today?
It is definitely the latter, without question. The Smarter Search feature is the foundational economics of the modern internet.
Give me convenience, take my data.
Exactly. You receive a highly convenient, frictionless service for free, and in exchange, the company aggregates your behavioral data to build and improve other products.
Wow.
It's the classic realization that if you are not paying for the product, you are the product.
It's so true.
Yeah.
But the sources highlight another feature they offered that runs completely counter to that whole data mining philosophy.
Yeah, the BIOS option.
Yes.
Yes.
BIOS, bring your own server. When I read how this functioned, it genuinely blew my mind because it just feels impossible in today's tech climate.
The BIOS feature is a magnificent relic of a much more open internet.
It really is.
To alleviate the very real trust issues users had about sending their private digital maps to a third-party corporate server, Xmarks actually allowed Firefox users to entirely bypass the Xmarks infrastructure.
Okay, let's break down how that actually worked for the user, because bring your own server sounds incredibly technical.
Well, it required some technical literacy, sure, but the mechanism was brilliant. You could configure the Xmarks browser extension to completely ignore the company's central cloud.
Yeah.
Instead, you could point the extension to sync your data using your own personal WebDAV or FTP server.
Meaning, I could set up an FTPA file transfer protocol server on like an old computer sitting in my own basement.
Yeah, exactly.
I own the hardware, I control the internet connection, and the Xmarks extension would just quietly route my data directly to my basement instead of a corporate server farm.
Precisely. WebDAV, which stands for Web Distributed Authoring and Versioning.
Kitschy name.
I know, right? It's basically an extension of the Internet's standard protocol that allows you to securely manage files on a remote server. By giving users the ability to input their own WebDAV or FTP credentials, Xmarks was essentially saying, hey, we built this beautiful, seamless software interface, but we don't demand to hold your data hostage. You can keep the actual files on your own hardware.
Try asking a major tech giant today to let you use their pristine software interface, but demand that all your data be stored on a hard drive in your closet instead of their proprietary cloud.
Huh, they would laugh you out of the room.
They really would. We live in an era of mandatory walled gardens.
Completely.
Xmarks existed in this brief utopian window where software developers were actually still willing to hand users the keys to their own data infrastructure.
It really demonstrates that the centralized, data-hungry cloud we have today wasn't the only possible outcome for the internet. It was a choice made by the industry, mostly driven by the monetization problems we discussed earlier.
So synthesizing everything we've pulled from the sources today, the story of Xmarks really is the ultimate tragedy of the early web.
It really is.
It was a tool that brilliantly solved a massive universal friction point. It brought cross-platform harmony to our chaotic digital lives.
Yeah.
But the fundamental unit economics of cloud computing meant it grew too fast to afford its own success.
Success was fatal.
Right. It was swallowed up by a larger entity that only wanted its underlying technology, left to languish in a zombie state, and eventually shut down once the major browsers just copied its functionality directly into their own code.
It was the pioneer that painstakingly carved the path through the wilderness, only to be, paved over by the massive big tech highways we all commute on today.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Okay.
Which leaves us with a lingering question for you to mull over as you go about your day, opening tabs and watching your devices seamlessly sync without a second thought.
Yeah, think about this.
If a universally loved, critically acclaimed tool like Xmarks, a company that literally held the map to the daily habits of 15 million people, could not survive with a $9 million investment.
Right.
What does that say about the true cost of the free internet we rely on right now?
It's a scary thought.
Is any application actually free? Or are we all just enjoying a temporary illusion of scale, blissfully unaware, until the eventual shutdown notice arrives in our inbox?
It certainly makes you view the invisible infrastructure of your digital life through a much sharper lens.
It absolutely does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We love dissecting these incredible tech histories with you, peeling back the polished surface of the tools we use every day to understand the hidden mechanics underneath. Until next time, keep questioning the magic behind the screen.